What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome back to my channel, and I'm back with another schedule preview and record prediction video. And today, we're going to be going through the 2020 Washington Huskies. So Washington was a team last year that was fairly decent. They went, well, we'll look at their record here in a little bit. But again, they were a fairly decent team last year. They had a transfer quarterback in Jacob Eason. He came over from Georgia and was pretty okay. But they are losing him at quarterback. So Jacob Sirmon is going to be coming in, and I feel like he has the potential to be really good. But the most notable loss for Washington is they are losing their head coach, who, in my opinion, is a Hall of Fame head coach in Chris Petersen, with countless other guys on offense and countless guys on defense. So they're going to have to replace a lot. But I feel like they can do it this year. So we're going to go ahead and see if Washington's schedule can help them out a little bit and Washington can be better than we all think this year, or if it's going to be more so of a rebuilding year than we all think for the Washington Huskies. Here's the schedule for the Washington Huskies. You looked in there, their 2019 record was 8-5, so they went 7-5 in the regular season, as I almost spoiled there in the intro. 7-5 in the regular season. They played in some fairly decent games, played Oregon pretty close for a little bit. Overall, not a bad season for the Washington Huskies. Then come their bowl game. They had to play Boise State, and it was a game that I thought was going to be a no-brainer, and Boise State was going to be able to win fairly easily. But Washington proved, I think, a lot of the country wrong and absolutely controlled that entire game. They ended up beating Boise State pretty badly, if I do remember, and that is how they got to 8-5. You'll look up there, their home games are going to be in purple, and their away games are going to be in the faded gold color. So without further ado, let's go ahead. Take a look at the Washington Huskies schedule, and their first game of the season is going to be an interesting one, the home game against the Michigan Wolverines. So while Michigan is losing quite a bit on the defensive side, their offensive side is returning quite a bit. Running back Zach Charbonnet, running back Hassan Haskins, wide receiver Ronnie Bell, wide receiver Nico Collins, wide receiver Tariq Black transferred to Texas, but they also are returning their tight end Nick Eubanks. Quarterback is the one big question for Michigan, and I believe the starter is going to end up being Dylan McCaffrey. So their offense is going to be pretty decent next year, but their defense has me worried for the Michigan Wolverines. Their defense might not be all that great next year. They're losing their linebacker, Josh Uche, and countless other guys are leaving as well. So it's going to be an interesting game to watch. I do feel like Michigan just has the more talent, has just way more talent than Washington does, especially on the offensive side. But it's a home game, and Washington could be itching to get off to a strong start. Like I said, I think Jacob Sirmon could be really good. So I feel like Washington beats Michigan in the quarterback position, but in every other position on the offensive side, I feel like Michigan has the edge, and that's why I'm going to lean towards the Wolverines in this one. I do feel like it's going to be a close game, but a game that I think Washington will ultimately lose, but by single digits. I think Washington definitely has potential to win this game, and it's going to be close. Then an easy one, a home game against Sacramento State. An FCS team should be an easy win for the Huskies. So then they have to play Utah State the next week, and Utah State is losing their quarterback, Jordan Love. Jordan Love was drafted in the first round by the Green Bay Packers, so he is leaving. But overall, Utah State's still a very talented team, and I feel like if Utah State can replace Jordan Love, they're going to be a scary team and a team that a lot of good teams in the Mountain West, like Boise State and Air Force, would have to watch out for. But I don't think they've replaced Jordan Love 2 or 3 games into the season. I mean, that's just not going to happen, so Washington should be able to get the win here. And they get their bye week, and in terms of their schedule, it's an okay place for a bye week. It's before a really tricky road game against Oregon, but you don't want it this early because now you have to play 9 conference games in a row without a break, and that's going to be really hard, especially for a team that is losing their head coach. But like I said, after their bye week is a game against Oregon. Oregon's the team that I expect to win the Pac-12 this year. I think they're going to be really, really good. And Oregon just has way more talent than Washington. Last year, this game was fairly close, and it was in Washington, but now they're going to have to go on the road and play in Eugene, and I don't think Washington's going to be able to come away with this one. Now, we've seen some crazy things in college football. Maybe they can pull off an upset, but I believe that Tyler Shuck is going to end up being a better quarterback than Jacob Sirmon, and Oregon already has more offensive weapons, so at the end of the day, it's going to be a loss for the Washington Huskies. Then a home game against the Oregon State Beavers. Now, Oregon State's a team that is only trending upward. They have a pretty decent quarterback and pretty decent weapons surrounding him. They were able to give Oregon quite a good game last year, which they haven't been able to do in a little bit. So Oregon State, I think, definitely does have the potential to get into a bowl game. But at the end of the day, Washington just is the more talented team. Jacob Sirmon, I do believe, is a better quarterback, and I think that Washington is just going to be able to overpower Oregon State and come away with a pretty solid win here. And they're going to want to build some momentum with a win against Oregon State because it's a big road game coming up against the Utah Utes. Now, Utah is losing their quarterback and their running back, Zach Moss, but they are bringing in transfer Tyler Huntley over from South Carolina, and he should be able to start right away. And Utah does already have a pretty solid defense. So Utah is not going to go anywhere. I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year, but definitely going to be a pretty solid team. I feel like Washington overall has the more offensive talent, but defensive talent, Utah has the more defensive talent. And I feel like since it's a road game, this is a game that I see Washington being able to lose. Washington definitely, I think, could drop this game, and in my opinion, more than likely will drop this game just because it's a tricky road game. Utah's still going to be pretty decent, as I just said. It's going to be a very close game, in my opinion, and a game that I could see either side winning. Then a home game against the Arizona Wildcats, and Arizona's losing Khalil Tate, and who basically was their entire offense. Arizona was like the Virginia of the Pac-12 last year, except they weren't as good. Now Arizona's defense isn't that great to begin with either, and I think Arizona is definitely in the rebuilding process, and they need a couple years in order to get back up there and get back into a bowl game. So Washington should have no problem with the Arizona Wildcats. Then a road game against the California Golden Bears. And this Cal team I really, really like this year. Returning their quarterback, Chase Garbers, lots of weapons around him. Defense has some of the better defensive backs in the entire nation. So, not in the entire nation, on the entire Pac-12. Cal should be able to win this one pretty handedly, in my opinion. I think Washington can make it a closer game, but Cal's just got way too much experience and returning, of course, their head coach, which is big. And I think Washington has, while they have a lot of things figured out by now, I don't think they're going to have enough figured out, and Cal's going to be able to get the win. Then a home game against the Stanford Cardinal, and Stanford's an interesting team to figure out. They have a pretty solid quarterback, but other than that, Stanford's got some pretty okay talent, but it's nothing that really sticks out. I feel like this game is going to be closer than people think, because I feel like it's going to be very much so a quarterback battle, but Washington is, in my opinion, the more talented team and should be able to win this one, maybe by double digits, I do believe. Then a road game against the USC Trojans, and a team that is the favorite to win the Pac-12 South this year. And USC is going to have one of the more explosive offenses in college football, in my opinion, and I don't feel like Washington's going to be able to keep up here with USC. I see the Trojans being able to beat the Huskies. Then a road game against the Colorado Buffaloes, and this game also should be an easy win for Washington. Colorado's losing their quarterback, Steve Montez. They're also losing their head coach, Mel Tucker. I mean, Colorado's definitely in the rebuilding phase, and in my opinion, definitely the worst team in the Pac-12. Washington should have no problem here with the Buffaloes. Then a road game against the Washington State Cougars. It's the Apple Cup. It's always played on a Friday. And this year, I feel like Washington is the more talented team this year. In past years, I probably would have favored Washington State, but Washington State just can never seem to beat their rival in Washington, and they're losing their head coach, Mike Leach. They're also losing their quarterback. Lots of other guys are leaving. Washington State is going to be in the rebuilding process, and Washington should be able to get an easy road win here against the Cougars. All right, so now with everything said and considered for the Washington Huskies, I have them doing exactly what they did last year, and that was going 7-5. Now I feel like Washington is not as good Now I feel like Washington's not as good of a team as they were last year in terms of raw talent, but in terms of potential, this Washington team has more potential than the team did last year. Lots of seniors playing last year. Now this year, Washington's got a lot of young guys that they can bring in, and I think this Washington's team has a lot of potential, but I don't think it's going to show out to its fullest in year one. They have a really tough schedule. They have to play a lot of the higher teams in the Pac-12 on the road in Oregon, Utah, Cal, and USC. All those games are going to, in my opinion, result in a loss for Washington. I also have them losing to Michigan. Now, I definitely could see them being able to beat Michigan, but then maybe this is the year Washington State beats them, or Utah State's able to replace Jordan Love fairly quickly. I just feel like 7-5 is where Washington is going to be this year. It's definitely, in my opinion, is going to be a rebuilding year for Washington, but they do have the talent to win a lot of their games. Or excuse me, they do have the talent to win the majority of their games. Like, again, they have a lot of easy home games like Oregon State, Arizona. Stanford is not that easy, but I think they'll win it. And then Colorado, also Sacramento State. Utah State and Michigan are the two biggest games on the schedule in non-conference. Obviously, Michigan, I see them losing that one, but maybe they can make it closer, even win it, build some momentum for the rest of the season. And as I just said, if Utah State can replace Jordan Love, they're going to be a dangerous team. So now let's move on to the record range for Washington. I take this team's worst-case scenario, along with their best-case scenario. It's where I expect them to be this year. Now, their worst-case scenario for me is 5-7. As I said, it's going to be a rebuilding year for Washington. And while I think this team has a lot of potential, it just could not show out in year one. And I have a fairly difficult road for the talent that this Washington team has. And I could see them missing out on a bowl game again. They lost their head coach, Chris Petersen, so they're going to have to adapt to an entirely new system at head coach. And I just feel like their absolute worst-case scenario is 5-7. All right, so now their best-case scenario, and it's 10-2. For me, while I said this team has a lot of potential, and while I don't think it's going to show out in year one of a new head coach, I think it definitely could show out in year one with a head coach. And this scenario will start off with a great win at home against Michigan and build some momentum for the rest of the season. And they're going to have to win some tough road games, such as on the road at Oregon, on the road at Utah, on the road at Cal, on the road at USC. They're going to have to win a couple of those in order for them to get to this best case scenario. But like I said, lots of potential for this Washington team. And if it shows out in year one, I totally could see the Huskies at 10-2. But my current prediction for the 2020 rebuilding Washington Huskies is 7-5. That's going to do it for my schedule preview and record prediction for the 2020 Washington Huskies. And if you guys enjoyed, please leave a like. Also consider subscribing if you are brand new to the channel or just enjoy my content. And if you haven't done so already, please do leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Washington Huskies. And as always, until next time, remember, play hard, but tailgate harder. See y'all in the next video. Goodbye.